Small business owner, remote worker, entrepreneur. Have you heard of Coin Co-working? It's Huntsville's latest hidden gem and inspiring an affordable community workspace. Situated in the beautifully renovated Lincoln Mill campus, just minutes from downtown, Coin is the ultimate co-working space in Huntsville, offering creative yet professional workspace, an unmatched networking community, and affordable membership pricing. Your business will have zero problems adding a little coin to your bottom line. Consider Coin your all-inclusive resort for professional workspace. You simply pay an affordable monthly membership and you unlock amazing amenities, including professional, modern, and complete workspace, team meeting spaces, air printers, copiers, and scanners, Google Fiber Wi-Fi, locally sourced drip coffee, and so much more. From affordable flex space memberships to private office options and everything in between, Coin Co-working has exactly what you need to be excited about work again. Take care of your office space headaches and you can focus on achieving your career goals. Declare your independence from your current drab and boring office setup today and schedule your tour of Coin Co-working. Learn more about Coin and schedule your tour today at coincoworking.com, and all this information will be in the episode notes. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hey, Clark. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to finally have you on. I think it's we've had the conversation over the last, maybe 6 months, maybe since the beginning of the year, of like actually having this conversation on air on the podcast. So I'm glad to finally have you here.
Well, I appreciate your persistence, and I'm finally happy the time worked out where I could be on. It's my first podcast.
Yeah, I tried to tell everybody before we get started. It's just a conversation. There just happens to be microphones, headphones, and a camera on, but it's try to be as laid back as possible. But if you would like to introduce yourself, and we'll kind of get started there.
Sure. My name is Nemil Shah, co-founder, physician and co-founder of ApproXie Urgent Care. The other half of the partnership is my wife. We could have done it without Heather. I've been in Huntsville for pretty much my whole life, short of being born here. I should tell people I was born here so I could be a native.
Yes.
But I moved here when I was 2. I've been here for 37 years.
Oh, wow. So, like you said, you grew up in Huntsville, went to Grissom, and kind of did that whole Huntsville, almost like Huntsville native thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of a mutt socially. I'm a Indian American. Grew up on the north side of town and went to University Place, Morris Elementary, and then we moved over to the south side of town, went to Whitesburg, then went to Grissom. So I've sort of seen Huntsville as a whole.
Yes, yeah. So, your background, you went to medical school, you went to UAB, and you went to become a doctor. So, tell me a little bit about that process and kind of what ultimately ended up you kind of pursuing a career in that.
Well, my older sister wanted to be a doctor, so growing up, she would always operate on my stuffed animals, and I just sort of went along with it. I didn't really know myself when I was 18, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I was really good at math and science, and as an Indian American, our parents really stress education. So it's either be a doctor or be an engineer.
And Huntsville's perfect for both, I would say now.
That's right. Growing up, that's why my parents relocated here to Huntsville because my dad's a mechanical and civil engineer. So he worked at Brown's Ferry Power Plant. But over that time, he had several layoffs. So my parents never wanted me to be an engineer. So not knowing really what I wanted to do, and I didn't know myself well enough, I sort of acquiesced to my parents' wishes and went to medical school. Okay.
So did you go to UAB for your undergrad too and go to medical, like all undergrad and medical school there?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I spent quite a bit of time in Birmingham. I graduated with a biology degree and a chemistry minor, and took a year off and did K through 12 education. I was heavily involved in K through 12 education, so they offered me a role as a lab director in my year off. I was just trying to put off med school for as long as I could at that point.
So when you went to med school, your first 4 years, I'm assuming did you do all 4 years, your 4 years of medical school at UAB, and then your like all your rotations at UAB too?
Well, correct.
Okay.
So I did all my residency at UAB, but I came back home to the branch campus the 3rd and 4th year.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I did some of my electives in Birmingham, but for the most part, for my 3rd and 4th year, I was here in Huntsville.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we talked about it before when we were communicating via email. It's like my brother was very similar, went to Grissom, went to UAH for undergrad, and then went to UAB for med school, did the 2 years there, and then did 2 years at the branch one here as rotations, and now him and his wife are both doctors in Athens. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see. So, were you like most Huntsville natives, I guess at the time growing up,
when you finished med school, did you think, I'm never going to live in Huntsville again? Huntsville's not cool. I've seen Birmingham. Birmingham's growing. Birmingham's awesome. Or did you think, hey, I'm actually going to come back to Huntsville and live here?
Well, it's funny because all my friends have moved away to some of the larger cities, Atlanta, New York, Santa Monica, San Francisco, and I'm sort of one of the last ones here. But I've always loved Huntsville,
Okay.
and really I've always saw the opportunities here, and I thought maybe one day I could create something here as well. So I love the environment. I love the town. Maybe it was a sleepy little town. Now it's a little bit busier,
Yes.
and it's continuing to grow. So there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity here in Huntsville, and it's sort of a hidden gem here in the South. So I proudly represent Huntsville wherever I go. When people say, where are you from? I say, well, I'm from Alabama. They're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, we're from the Rocket City.
Yes.
That's what we're founded on.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I've had a couple people on the podcast that have been that Huntsville native, that have grown up in Huntsville and kind of left maybe for a little bit, did school somewhere else, always thought about coming back. And so it is interesting just to see that dynamic. I mean, I grew up in Huntsville. I've never left. Went to school here. Don't plan on leaving. I mean, I love the place, and it's really it'd be hard to do beyond Rockets in another city. It really fits in Huntsville pretty well. So I think I'll stay in Huntsville for a while.
Yeah, the rising tide is going to raise all ships, right?
Yeah.
And part of it is also wanting to create something for myself. I always wanted to create something where I have the opportunity potentially to travel and go somewhere else. But really happiness is about what you create, and I wanted to create things around me and improve my community. And I'd really like to do that in Huntsville.
Yeah. So, I mean, you graduate from med school, you finish med school, you're officially a doctor, you have that white coat, and you're ready to go out. You didn't obviously start ApproXie right after finishing med school. Kind of what did you do after you finished med school, and kind of what sort of jobs were you in at that time?
Well, when I finished med school, I still was, unsure of what I wanted to do, right? So I took a year off after med school, and, I wasn't convinced I wanted to go to residency. So, I applied to jobs for consulting,
Wow.
healthcare consulting, and, I didn't have the qualifications in business to be a consultant. And I tried to be a medical sales rep, but I didn't have any sales experience either. So I was really underqualified for a lot of roles, but, had this MD, right?
Yeah.
And you can't really do anything with the MD unless you go to residency. So luckily they opened, my mom finally said, hey, well, you got to do something. I was like, okay, internal medicine residency opened here in Huntsville. It's on the branch campus, and they had a partnership with a hospital here. And so I decided to join. I had intended maybe when I was in medical school, I didn't still really know what I wanted to do. So I applied to radiology, and luckily they accepted the radiology application here in Huntsville. And, I started residency. And in my first year, I started really, really liking medicine. I didn't necessarily like, the application of medicine itself, but I really liked, going to different floors, talking to different people. And, I saw so much opportunity because there's so much inefficiency in healthcare. And I would be the guy that had the ideas. Why can't we do this? What if we had an app for this? What if we had a product that would make this easier? So I wanted to make things a lot easier for physicians, nurses, and everybody in the healthcare system. But really, it's hard to make meaningful or impactful change when you're the low man on the totem pole.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's such an interesting thing that, even at the time when you've gone through medical school, everyone would be like, doctor, doctor, doctor. You're still thinking, can I start this app or create this software or create this? So, was that always something that you've had that itch growing up? Or is that something that kind of started happening as you were going through med school, as you were going through college?
Funny story. I've always been sort of entrepreneurial. My mom tells a story and says, when you're young, you would see signs for McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and you asked me one day, you told me, well, everything has already been figured out and found. What am I going to find? And she said, don't worry, you'll find something. And so I've always had this curiosity. I was a kid that, I didn't ask why, but I asked how. How does this work? How does that work? And I've always been sort of business inclined to business. So in fifth grade, I sold pencils, and I would go take my Cub Scout points, and you'd get Cub Scout points every week. I bought a bunch of sports pencils at the supply store and, cornered the market, and I sold them for double.
There you go.
And so, yeah, I learned a lesson with that. My mom was like, well, where are you getting this money from? Well, the kids would bring, lunch money, and I'd take their quarter. So she thought the kids weren't able to buy lunch. So she scolded me and said, you always have to, it's incredible that you want to do business at such a young age, but you have to make sure that you don't take advantage of anybody. So I've kept that with me too. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's it's such an interesting thing how like that is like an underlying theme throughout. I mean, like you said, you've been thinking like this and had this itch growing up, going through college, going through med school. You still had this itch. You still wanted to do something, create something, and be just even more than just being a doctor, which is already a very tough job to have and a tough career to kind of get through. And you're always like, oh, let me just try to build something. Let me try to create this. So in 2017, you actually did. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, the ApproXie. So ApproXie started off as a software, correct? And then kind of became an urgent care?
That's right. Yeah. So, when you think about software, there's a lot to it. First, just thinking of the name, I spent a lot of time thinking of the name. So I was like, well, what do I want to name this software? The way it started was I would be, during lunch, I'd be talking to physicians around a table and pitching ideas. And finally they were like, Nemil, you need to do that. That'd be a great idea. And if you can get that started, it would be very valuable in healthcare. And I was talking about healthcare accessibility. I was a patient when I was in med school, and I realized that, I just didn't want to wait at the doctor's office all day. So when I got sick, I'd spend my day at the doctor's office. Maybe I'd be referred for labs, imaging, and I became non-compliant because the wait time was so high. Now I have a daughter, and when she gets sick, you call the doctor, and sometimes you can't get in the same day. So you start looking for, well, where are you going to find care? Maybe search urgent care near me. And as a provider or, physician, I was moonlighting at American Family Care.
Okay.
And while I was moonlighting, I said, well, hey, look, this looks like a great business model. I want to open an urgent care. But, when you're once you just finished medical school, you're in a lot of debt. So you don't have the financial backing to own a $40 per square foot corner lot. So you're priced out of the real estate. And if you find a more obscure location, you may be, you might not have the cash burn to sustain yourself over the 6 months to 12-month period. So I thought, well, what if I create an app that enables patients to, just put themselves on queue. Mm-hmm. And when I have availability, I will go ahead and accept them, and they get a GPS link, and they can just GPS straight to me. So I can monetize my time and my underutilized potential and help the patient out with accessibility, right? And now, irrespective of real estate, patients can find me because they have a digital lab, right?
Wow.
So that's how the idea started. But I realized, number one, I didn't know very much about software.
Yeah, that's what I was like. That was like my very first question was going to be like, so your background's in biology. Mm-hmm. How did you start and create an app and create the software to make this possible?
Well, a lot of reading, and I tried to took open courses online to even start programming, and realized that it was going to take me forever to build an app. Yeah. So I was like, well, how do other people build apps? And I found, you can go find third-party developers overseas, and I made a lot of mistakes. And it's like building a house when you're not a contractor, and everything relies on the foundation, and everything stacks up. And if you have a poor foundation, then the end product is going to be poor. So you have to tear it down, build it back up, right? So over time, I learned what I needed to know about building software, and the mentality was that, well, instead of why me, it's like why not me?
Yeah.
Like why can't I do it? And so I would come home from American Family Care, and I'd use that money because you don't make very much as a resident. You make maybe $30,000 to $40,000 as a resident. So I would moonlight on the weekends to make money. And a lot of times I would come back home. You'd wake up at 5:30 a.m., get to the hospital at 6, come home at 7 p.m., and then from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. I was on the Skype calls with developers overseas, right? And that was kind of the sacrifice. You know, you can sacrifice pretty much sleep in order to get
lots
this
of
done,
sleep.
right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, so in 2017, was that when the actual software became a thing? Or is that when you actually got your first physical location as an urgent care?
Well, it was actually both. You know, early in 2017, had the app and
Okay.
had developed it, but it was still kind of buggy and really bulky. Um, I met the love of my life at the hospital, and you know, we were getting married, so we paid for, you know, a modest wedding. And afterwards, you know, I was just hopping around to different clinics and what we call a locums physician. I didn't really want to commit to one clinic because I always wanted to do something of my own.
Yeah.
And finally, you know, after we got married, we were down to our last little bit of money. We had about 5,000 left in our account, and I said, you know, we need to start our own clinic.
That's exactly what you do when you only have a little bit of money left and it's kind of a life or death situation.
That's right.
How about we just spend the money?
Yep. Well, you know, she was nudging me to find a corporate job, and you know, it's funny because when we're engaged, I found a corporate job right out of medical school. My first job was at urgent care, and you know, I came home one day and I told her I quit my job, and she was like, "What? You know, we have this wedding to pay for. What are we gonna do?
Like, we have this house, or we have this, like, we have a mortgage, we have rent, we have bills, and you just quit."
We had 2 cats. Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but you know, when I came home,
just didn't
she
enjoy it. Yeah.
she was shocked, and so you know, that's one of the best decisions, you know, I've ever made, is leaving. And then, you know, I'd piecemeal schedules together from different urgent care clinics, so I got to see the whole gamut of urgent care here in North Alabama. And every time I was at urgent care, I had ideas, and I would tell, like, you know, the owners and say, hey, why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do this? And nobody would listen, right? It was hard to get any meaningful change in the way I wanted to do things. So I said, you know, once we got married, I felt like I didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
I said, well, Heather, you got to look at this as another residency. And luckily there was a building that had, you know, I'd be looking for real estate.
This is 2017 time frame?
Mid 2017. I'd be looking for real estate to figure out if there was a medical property that would be suitable for an urgent care. And it just so happened that there was this clinic on Sullivan Street in Madison that, you know, they had, it was Ivy's Meat and Three. I think it was a Dairy Queen, and then it was Ivy's Meat and Three, which was a really popular restaurant in Madison. Yeah. And then Dr. Pukas of Blossomwood Clinic came and remodeled it and made it a medical clinic. And, you know, that's had some staffing issues, so they had it for lease, and it sat there for a little bit. So I showed Heather, and she looked at it, and she said, no, we're not doing this. It looks like Dairy Queen. Yeah. So we walked in, it looked nice, and we were lucky enough to be able to lease it. Luckily, they didn't look at our financials. You know,
they didn't realize you were emptying your bank account to get this place.
That's right. Yeah. Like, well, we didn't have very much in our bank account, and so we negotiated 3 months for free, and the equipment stays there. So we got really lucky in that property. Yeah. And also Dr. Pukas' faith in, you know, us succeeding at that location. And so that's how it started. So in 2017, December of 2017, we opened our first clinic.
Wow. And I think what's crazy too to think about is, like, even just the real estate market at that time in Huntsville. Like, it wasn't that long ago. Mm-hmm. I graduated high school in 2017. But it's like the market then versus the market now. I mean, like, it would have been a whole different ball game to be in the financial situation you were in buying the place in 2017 if you were in that situation today buying that same place.
Yeah, we didn't buy the place.
Oh, really? Or even just being able to, like, occupy the place and use the place as an urgent care. Like, it would be a very different, there's just how the market and how Huntsville itself's grown so much over the last 6 years.
Oh, yeah. You see, there's very limited medical real estate on the market itself, and there's very limited, you know, and the macroeconomic climate is actually determining, you know, higher interest rates, slower building, but Huntsville continues to build. But yeah, there would have that property would have been long gone.
It would have been long gone, or the price point would have been so high you wouldn't even been able to even it's not even an option. Even though it looks like a Dairy Queen, it's still not an option.
That's right.
So I mean, I don't know, like, is the success, like, what does the success look like for an urgent care? I'm like, did you see success for the urgent care right off the bat? And, like, was the location, like, what are all the factors that ultimately led to you to then expand and grow and to now have 3 locations from that one first location on Sullivan Street?
So the first location, our parents, grandparents, they're worried about us. We didn't really have money for signage, very much money for marketing. So we did all this stuff ourselves. We would watch for cars that pulled into our parking lot, and they would one by one just use our parking lot as, to turn around on the street.
Wow.
So, we'd get excited, and we'd probably see one patient a day for a little while. But
Wow.
we did a lot of things wrong. But what we did know was that, number one, there was an urgent care across the street from us. Now it's a Shine Time car wash. So we opened up across the street from a competitor.
Wow.
But for us, we knew that we could provide a better experience than the next competitor. We knew that if we provide, be kind to patients and make sure that we treat patients with respect, then the word of mouth marketing would take care of itself. That first month was tough. The second month was really tough, but we knew that, we had to open up there in December because there's a time of high demand in urgent care. It's a cyclical business, and November through February is like Alaskan crab king fishing season, where they go out for a certain time, catch all their fish or their king crab, and then come back. So flu season's like that for urgent care.
Okay.
And so we knew that there's going to be high demand, and with high demand, patients were going to find us because there's a lot of when you go to an urgent care, there's usually a long wait time.
Almost all the time.
So we founded our clinic on the premise of, number one, I knew that patients didn't want to wait, and we were going to get them in and out quickly. Yeah. And Heather was always like, well, we have to make sure that we provide the best experience. So it has to be clean, it has to smell great. It has, you have to be really friendly and make sure that you treat them well.
All the things you noticed from other urgent cares that you did not like, you were like, we will not do those things, and we will do things differently. Because, and I think we'll talk a little bit about it in a second, but I actually experienced your urgent care back in April. So, I'll let you continue kind of the conversation.
Yeah. And so slowly, we weren't networked with any insurance companies. Patients would come in and we'd just say, well, how much is your copay? $20. Okay, we'll take it. Right. And our cash pay prices were $50 for any visit at that point. And patients would come and ask us, well, how are you guys going to survive? And we're like, well,
I don't know.
We don't know yet, but what we did know is that, if patients could experience care from our clinic, then they wouldn't want to go anywhere else. And, we bet on that, and we really hedged on that, and that worked out for us. So, we slowly started to grow, but, we didn't have any money to hire any employees. Granny came and worked. Heather's granny came and worked with us and answered phone calls for us every now and then. She didn't clock in, so she didn't get paid.
Yes.
But, we still remember those early days, and we worked, we were open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We worked every single day for the first year. And, short of living at our clinic, which I did propose to my wife, I said, hey, why don't we just move in? We had a shower in the back. And she said, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
And, 6 months into our business, she decided to start driving separately from me because that's the only time that she had apart.
Wow.
Which hurt my feelings a little bit.
But you also I kind of
understand. Right. Yeah. So,
that's crazy.
So the first year was tough, but, after that year, we made it through. And we actually hired our first employee at the end of that year.
Okay.
And so the second year, we get into our second year and we start getting busier. So we hire, our first part-time provider because we couldn't work every day.
Yeah, it's a little tough to work 7 days a week for all the time.
Yeah, and we could at that point because we didn't have a child.
Whew.
And I can't imagine doing that with children.
I wouldn't even want to do that now, and I don't even have children. I just have cats.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no way that I would be like, you're going to start this, but for the first year and a half, you have to work 7 days a week. Like, I'd be like, maybe not.
It's tough, but, it really solidified Heather and I's relationship, not only as, our personal relationship, but, I found the best co-founder I could ever find.
Yeah.
For our business success, we have to have two people that are equally invested into something to make it work. And Heather and I just worked really well together. So in that sense, that's a big part. I mean, that's a major part of our success is because I couldn't do that alone. And so, yeah, finally we got to a point where we were like, well, we can't work every day. We started working a little bit less, but you're still a mom and pop shop. And so when, nobody really wants to work weekends.
No.
So, I'd still be working the majority of weekends, and, it slowly progressed where we're hiring more people, we're having more demand, and we could only hire people when we got to a certain level of growth where it necessitated finding somebody.
A whole nother person to kind of take over a certain aspect because
That's right.
of just growth. So, I mean, the first 3 or so years there, you were slowly growing year over year. You were seeing more business. You were adding more team members. When did that second location? Because the second location wasn't the South Parkway one. You had a location. You had two prior to opening the one on South Parkway, correct?
Well, technically, yes.
Okay.
2019 is, we're still steadily growing, and in 2019, then I think we had seen about 20,000 patients that year in 2019, and then COVID hit. So early 2020, March 2020, we didn't know what was going to happen, and we had about 10 employees at that time. And we didn't want to lay anybody off or decrease any hours or cause any unnecessary stress. But the first 3 months of COVID, our volume dropped probably 50% or more because everybody was scared to go out.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. We were also scared, but we also knew that, we had to be there to provide patient care and be there for the community. So, after that 3 months, boom, we saw, spikes in COVID.
Yeah.
And volume was just really hard to manage. But luckily we didn't lay anybody off. We were ready to handle the volume, and the volume just skyrocketed over those next 2 years.
Wow.
And during COVID, it was very stressful. It was hard to manage patient expectations, and it was hard to manage provider expectations and our employees. There's a lot of fear there. When somebody got exposed to COVID, we would shut the clinic down.
Yeah.
So those first few months, the first year was scary. The second year was just, draining and exhausting.
Yeah.
And I was wondering when this was going to end. And during COVID, Heather was pregnant, so we were expecting a baby. So that was a blessing. And so I didn't have Heather there at the clinic as much.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to manage just with one person. So I said, hey, you know what? Let's just sell this clinic, right? And I realized, to sell the clinic, nobody's really interested in one clinic location. It's hard to find a buyer just for one, and you don't get the valuation that you want either. So we started talking about potential expanding, and we looked for strategic partners in the area. We almost made a deal with a strategic partner, a great company, and a government contractor, heavy in tech, and with a great founder. And we almost did it. And during that time where we were negotiating, I went ahead and leased another location, which almost killed the deal with the strategic partner. But I thought that, leasing another location, because our clinic in Madison was getting so busy and we didn't have the real estate at the time, that leasing a location of 1.1 miles away, we could use our clinic in order to load balance our clinic. We could send patients over to the other clinic. And that one is close to the airport, town Madison.
Okay.
And not too far from our original location. And, in 2020, we redeveloped our software.
Okay.
That software that had always, thought would work, we redeveloped it. And during COVID, it really helped us manage our patient volume. And patients could go on and make an appointment or put themselves on a queue. And when there's super high demand for anything, patients will figure out how to find your product. Yeah. And what we learned is that patients were using our product. So we saw we have about 15,000 patients on our software now, but now we use that software more internally to load balance our clinic. So when patients make an appointment, they put themselves on a queue, we can easily accept them over to our Waltriana clinic, which is on the other side, close to the airport, which is a smaller clinic and it's more obscure, right? Mm-hmm. So now, regardless of the real estate or location, patient can find the clinic.
Yeah.
Wow. And so the idea worked. So 2020 was exciting in the sense of the software. I was like, well, it works like it should. It works perfectly.
Yeah.
And we were in negotiations with that tech company at that time, and or the government contractor at the time, and we're also working on building out our Hayes Farm clinic. So we opened our second location in September of 2022.
Okay.
And then we opened the third location, and the development company was great. And our consultants were amazing. So they got that project built on time, under budget,
Wow.
and we're ready to open up in November 2022. So that's when Hayes Farm opened.
Yeah, and the Hayes Farm is the one that I've actually went to. I guess this past April, so like a few months ago. We got back from a trip overseas, came back, felt a little sick. I was like, I should go to it was just a terrible 24 hours. I was like, I should just go to the doctor. I don't go to the doctor often. I should just go and get something, make sure everything's good to go. Don't want to get anyone sick. My wife works at the Publix right beside the urgent care at the Hayes development. And she was like, oh, you should try ApproXie. The pharmacist there, I think knows you. And is like, oh yeah, you should try I was like, okay, sure. We were already in conversations about being on the podcast. I was like, well, I'll just go there, experience it, so I can at least have something to bring to the podcast too. And it was honestly it was a great experience because it was quick. It was seamless. Even my wife dropped me off and was waiting for me, and she was like, oh, you're already done. She was shocked that I was already gone. It's like, yeah, I've already seen the doctor. I had COVID. I was went through the whole thing, and she was like, that was so quick. I was like, highly recommend. And so it was a cool experience to just to see how something that people are. I think it's interesting just to think about a service like a urgent care. It's kind of has this mentality that people expect it to be a slow, draining process. Mm-hmm. And so that was my mindset going in. It's I'm expecting to be here for a little bit. There's going to be a lot of people. It's not really going to be the cleanest, nicest place. It's just going to be kind of you just have to do it. It's just one of those things you have to do. You expect it at a urgent care. Mm-hmm. And to not see or have any of those experiences was amazing. So I would highly recommend, if anyone is sick and needs to go to urgent care, go to ApproXie. It was amazing. And it was just a seamless act to get checked. So it was awesome.
Well, hey, you gotta say that I did not pay you to say that.
Yeah, he did not pay me. I actually did go to ApproXie, and he had no idea. So
well, I really appreciate that, Clark, and that really speaks to the team that we have. We have a great team that provides the care even when Heather or I are not there. So our team of providers from front desk to medical assistants to the providers that we have at the clinic, they're handpicked and they curate a specific experience.
Yeah.
So we want to be different in that way, and we're really happy that you chose our clinic and we were involved in your care. But streamlining those operations is something that we continue to do, and we want to be more and more efficient. Whether it's paperwork, and you don't have to fill out. When you're sick.
You don't want to do anything.
Yeah, but patients have accepted the status quo.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And patients have expected that their doctor's visit, when they go there, they're gonna take a book or take their phone, maybe something on Netflix, and watch it because they're gonna be waiting in the lobby, right?
Yeah.
And patients are really pleasantly surprised when they sit down and boom, they're called back. Yeah. They're like, whoa, that was really fast.
It was I turned in the paperwork, and by the time I had turned in the paperwork and sat down, they were already calling me to go back. And I was like, this is a very weird. And I was like, oh, when I get back there, I'm gonna be sitting there for a while. It's just gonna take forever. They're gonna do a little bit of vitals, they're gonna leave, and the doctor's gonna be a little bit. And it was the doctor was there. I was like, okay, this is all going a lot quicker than I expected. And then I left, and I was like, well, that was easy. It was 30 minutes, and I was done. And it was it was a cool experience. And what I think what's so interesting to me, and I think it's a huge part of your story, is that, most people would think, and I would think that, you go through this journey to be a doctor. You go through medical school. You go through it's a tough, long journey. It's not an easy journey. It's not fun all the time. The schooling is long, but you finally finish that, and you have that job security of being a doctor. Mm-hmm. The pay, all the things that come with being a doctor. The job security is amazing. Mm-hmm. But you decided that, hey, maybe rather than having that security, I'm just going to launch my own thing with the savings that I have and start this. And you had this entrepreneurial ick, which is incredible to see. And it's incredible to see just in the span of 6 years, you have 3 locations and you're growing steadily, mm-hmm. which is just, it's incredible to see. Do you think your success in ApproXie and just kind of this entrepreneurial journey is because you were in the right place at the right time, or do you think it was because of your hard work?
I think both, right? Being at the right place at the right time doesn't hurt. But at the time, we didn't know it was the right time. So there's no right time, I don't think, to start something that you're really passionate about, right? Either it's going to work out, or you struggle to get it to work out, and at some point, you have this exponential growth curve in the future. But there's no right time, and but I do think that the right time, the right idea, and the right team really are important to getting a service, a product to be successful. And luckily, we had the right mix of things at that time. Speaking to the healthcare landscape, when you look at healthcare, did I feel secure as a physician at that point? Well, I was never really satisfied as a physician. In my role as a CEO and founder of ApproXie, I'm very, very happy being in healthcare. I get to mentor and nudge these young employees. Some of them, may have a GED from high school. Our chief operating officer, started at Taco Bell, and she's 24 years old, and she has grown with limited medical background. She was working at Taco Bell to pay for medical assistant school.
Wow.
And she was so young, so she didn't have so a lot of our employees have grown with us and grown, and we really believe in promoting internally, right? But I never felt so secure in healthcare in general, because reimbursements are continuing to decline. There's a huge burnout, physician burnout. COVID's only accelerated that. And, it's becoming harder and harder to be independent. I've always thought, I wanted to be free and create the changes, create the community that I wanted, utilize ideas and create and innovate to create the society that I want, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I could ever do that in healthcare. And I realized that during residency when I was working for corporate clinics, it was really hard to get the stakeholders to buy into any ideas. So really I didn't feel secure because I felt like I wasn't valued in those positions either. So I felt like, you know what, we're going to open our own thing, and I will work 100 hours a week. I don't care. Well, we did. And I don't care how much we have to work. At least what I'm working for, I get to take home at the end of the day and be happy.
And I think it's testament to what you mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast. It's, all your friends have left and gone into other cities, and you love Huntsville, and you wanted to see Huntsville grow. As Huntsville was growing, you wanted to grow and help Huntsville become what it is today and what it's going to be in the future. And I think it's huge to think about. You've had this entrepreneurial journey. It's incredible for you. You've had this 6-year journey, these 3 locations. We're halfway through 2023. What does the rest of 2023 look like for ApproXie? What are some goals you want to accomplish? And then maybe what does the next 3 to 5 years look like? What are some big long-term goals you have?
Yep. Well, we're not done with ApproXie. I always look at our clinics as the hardware to the software that we've built. And what will come of the software, I'm not sure, but it works for our clinics. The hardware, we're going to continue to try to expand our clinic and our brand reputation. We hope to be able to service communities outside of Huntsville and Madison. Patients already come from Decatur or Athens, Hazel Green, Meridianville to Owens Crossroads to visit our clinics in Madison.
Wow.
So we're seeing a lot of patients that, will rather drive to wait less.
Wow.
And get in and out and have their prescription ready by the time they get back. So there's a lot of other communities that we feel like we can impact. And, as Huntsville's population grows, there's obviously a need for healthcare services. So we feel like, we're going to continue to grow that aspect of our business. From the software side, I think that the product is really powerful, and maybe we'll integrate artificial intelligence and ChatGPT to create a triage system for patients before they even come to the doctor, so they know which doctor to go to and who has availability.
Wow.
So we hope to deploy that in our community. But we, look to continue to grow and be part of the community, and really want to grow our employees to a level that, and give them opportunities that maybe otherwise they may have not had. So continue to mentor and spin off businesses. We've had a few of our employees start businesses of their own. I always try to educate and coach them about creating their own businesses, being free, So we've spun off a company called Batch Health, which is a revenue cycle management company. We've invested in that, and so our 3 clinics support that revenue cycle management. We have also spun off a marketing company, Expansion Media Solutions. We have 2 very creative young employees of ours, Catherine and Kaylee, that have developed our website,
Wow.
are continuing to. We have a program at our clinics where you could put your advertisement up as a digital billboard. So when patients come in, they get to see local community businesses and get exposure. So we have high intent patients that may see an advertisement and want to know more about a service. So they manage the Expansion Media Solutions and the marketing aspect of our business. We found that marketing, and I was doing the marketing myself for the last 4 years, and I've realized that I probably wasted a lot of money doing it myself and lost a lot of money because I'm not an expert at Google SEO or SEM, but what I do know is that we can connect with patients, and being able to connect with patients through social media and digital technology avenues is really important. And so they take that vision, and now they're creating their own business out of it. So we hope to continue to empower our employees to spin off other businesses. We're starting a weight loss platform, so weight loss by ApproXie. We're also starting a DOT and occupational health platform at our clinic, and one of the nurse practitioners is going to be co-owner of those services, so hopefully she'll be able to grow. So yeah, we hope to continue to inspire and grow in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's quite a bit of stuff happening within your brain, within your day-to-day life. I couldn't imagine just navigating and prioritizing certain things. It seems like there's so much exciting and awesome things happening. I think really the last question is it kind of ties right into that marketing element. But if someone's listening and they want to go to your urgent care, they want to find out more information, they want to look at the software, any of the information that we've talked about for the last 40 minutes, where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
To connect with ApproXie, we have a website, www.approxieurgentcare.com. If you want to go to our software app and see how it works, it's ApproXie.com, ApproXie.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you're interested. We're interested in growth, so if you're in real estate and have opportunities, reach out to me. I really appreciate all of your time, Clark. You've done a great job with your podcast. You're an entrepreneur as well. And so I love learning from other entrepreneurs like you.
Well, I'll have all his contact information, the websites, all in the episode notes. So anything that you've mentioned, if anyone's listening, they can just go to the episode notes and there'll be links to everything. I thank you so much for spending the last 40 plus minutes talking with me and telling a little bit about your story. I continue to look forward to the success that you'll have in Huntsville and the Madison County and the Tennessee Valley area for years to come. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.